If you are learning Japanese, you're probably really excited about taking the JLPT. And a lot of people capitalize on that. There are so many study guides and books and videos on YouTube and websites teaching you how to pass the JLPT N5, N4, N3, N2, and then N1 if you're lucky someday. And here's the part where I ruin it for you and tell you it's overrated. Hello all you lovely people, and welcome to my new and improved studio. See, I really am a weeb. And I thought, what better way to kick off this new look than to shit on the JLPT? So I did a video a couple years ago explaining the pros and cons of the JLPT because it's not all bad. There are some reasons, legit reasons to take the JLPT and why that can be beneficial. So check out that video if you haven't seen that one already, if you want a more balanced, like it's good and it's also bad view of the JLPT. But if you want to hear a lighthearted rant, then stick around. The first problem that I had with the JLPT that I outlined in that video was that it only tests your reading and your listening comprehension of Japanese. It does not test your writing or your speaking abilities. So it's like half of the language that it's not testing. The second problem that I mentioned in that video was that you study for the test and not really Japanese. Cramming and studying for an exam does not equal actually learning and retaining information. Another problem that I have with the JLPT is that it's kind of elitist. It's only offered once a year and in very few select locations, and there's a fee to take the test. So you have to save up money to pay this fee, and for your travel expenses most likely, and your hotel expenses most likely, and you have to invest all this money to maybe pass the test. So now I thought I would expand upon these negative points and explain in further detail why I just think the JLPT is very overrated and you probably shouldn't take it. So my main problem with the JLPT is that most people don't even really need to take it. I did outline in the last video that I did a couple years ago that there are a couple benefits of taking the JLPT. If you pass levels N1 or N2, that can qualify you for certain schools or certain jobs or other opportunities. Yet they offer levels N3 through N5 as well, which pretty much are useless. I don't know of any situations in which a passing score on N5 or N4 or even N3 will get you in the door. This might have changed, but generally speaking, a passing score of N5 to N3 is useless. All it does is it tells you what level JLPT you are at. It doesn't really tell you what level Japanese you're at, and it doesn't give you something to put on your resume to get into a program or a job. And another problem that I have with the JLPT is its format. It's multiple choice. This is not how language works. Language is not multiple choice. It's not like if you're talking to somebody and you can't quite think of a vocabulary word, you don't suddenly get like 4 choices popping up in the air in front of you and then you get to choose one of them. Like seeing the choices out there can jog your memory and be like, oh yeah, that's the word. So the fact that it's multiple choice makes it a pretty bad indicator of how good you are at that language. And along those lines, it tests your ability to take tests more than it tests your ability to speak and understand Japanese. Yuta did a couple really good videos that illustrate this. He had grade schoolers, I think they were in 5th grade, take the N3 sample questions, and he had Japanese adults take N1 sample questions, and he showed through there that a lot of the Japanese people, native Japanese speakers, when they're looking at these questions, these multiple choice questions, a lot of them would say, you know, it could be A, but it could also be C. And you're supposed to pick the best answer, but there's technically often 2 correct answers to choose from. And this is where your ability to take tests comes into the equation. If you have been more recently in school, you're a lot more likely to do better on this test because you're used to taking tests. There are certain skills to taking tests. And if you haven't been in school for many, many years, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Another problem that I have with the JLPT in regards to being a translator and using the JLPT as a guide to tell you if you're ready to translate. Simply understanding a language is only a very, very small part of how good a translator you're going to be. Because translation itself is a skill. A lot of people go to school to learn the craft of translation. It's its separate thing. And then one step further from that, the art of translating entertainment, you know, poetry, songs, anime, manga, games, novels, that takes yet another level. It means you have to be a really good writer in your native language. And simply passing N2 or N1 on the JLPT is not any indication of that. And And lastly, another problem that I have with the JLPT is the way in which the people speak in the audio clips. I don't know how it is in N5 through N3 because I didn't take those tests, but with N2 and then the practice questions that I listened in N1, they were laughably easy and very slow and very much not the way natural Japanese people speak Japanese, especially N1, that claims on the site that N1 listening section is supposed to be like native, like speed of Japanese. It's so not native. It's like spoken very clearly and slowly and with very good diction. So it's really not a good indicator of you being native level. Like, you're supposed to be native level Japanese if you pass N1, and the speakers in that section are just not speaking native enough. So anyone can complain about something and point out all of its flaws, but is there a way that the JLPT could be better? So I would say just the premise itself is already kind of impossible. Like, testing someone's language aptitude for a foreign language, it's pretty much impossible to do with just like a test, especially a standardized test. So I feel like in an ideal world, there would be some sort of like standardized online course or something, coursework that you can do instead of just a test that would better indicate your proficiency in Japanese. But I understand that like that would then create even more barriers. That would be even more expensive than a test. Not everyone has the time to invest in a big course. And standardized tests are nice and quick and simple and uniform, and they're just an easier way for organizations to just look at that score and say, okay, this score, you're in. So if the JLPT must be a test, I have a few ideas for tweaks to improve it. So the first way that I would improve it is, instead of there being 5 different tests, and then you have to take each test separately and pass or fail the test, I would just have 2 tests, and then depending on how highly you scored in that test is what score you would end up getting. So instead of having 5 separate tests, there would be 2 tests, a like intermediate level test and an advanced level test. And the intermediate level test, if you scored like 70% to 80%, you get N5. If you score 80% to 90%, you get N4. If you score 90% to 100, you get N3 or something like that. So that way, instead of like, if you've never taken the JLPTs and you're worried that you wouldn't pass N3, so you take N5, but it turns out that that's way too easy for you. Or if in my case, you've taken N2 and then you haven't taken N1, but someone hears, oh, you scored N2, that means you're only good enough for N2. That would sort of change that up. There would just be 1 or 2 tests that you could take total, and however highly you score on that test, that is your score. And then I would take 1 step beyond that, and I would score the different sections of the test differently. So there would be like a multiple choice section with grammar, with fill in the blank. That would be 1 score. That would be like, an A or an N1 in grammar. And then there would be a section where you are listening. Then there would be another section. So each section you would be scored differently. You might get like N1 in one section, N3 in another section, N2 in another section. And then there could probably be like an overall average score. And on that note, I would make the test longer and there would be more sections. So in addition to having reading, comprehension, and like fill in the blank, multiple choice grammar section, I would also have a written essay component, and I would also, and this would be a lot harder. Again, this logistically would be hard to do, but I think ideally there would also be a spoken dialogue component where you and a tester have like a 5-minute conversation. Or perhaps you could like prepare a speech and like recite the speech in Japanese at least for a testing professional. For the reading comprehension sections, I would make them all like the N1 reading comprehension section. So here's the thing. I think at least the practice test that I took online for N1, I think that is easier than N2 in many different ways, and here's why. N2, their like reading comprehension section, a lot of it is just like, here's a sentence, and then there's a missing word, and then how do you write that word in kanji? And like some of the kanji will be very similar to each other. I don't think that's a great way of testing someone's linguistic abilities. I think a better thing to do would be to like have a passage, have like a paragraph about something, and then at the end of the paragraph ask questions in Japanese about the paragraph. And that's what that section is like in the N1 test. And I think ideally it would be like that in all of the tests. For the essay section, there would just be a prompt, or like maybe 3 different prompts that you can choose from, and then like write an essay about this for an hour. And then for the listening comprehension section, parts of it would be with actual native speakers speaking like Japanese people actually speak. Not with very clear diction, not with nice, smooth, slow, controlled speeds, but more like actual people. And perhaps even in the advanced parts of the test, they would include dialects like people talking in Kansai-ben, or maybe even have old people or children. Those are some dialects. So if the JLPT were actually like the test that I just outlined, I would definitely not be N1 in all sections. And that's kind of the point. A lot of people mistakenly think that because I'm a translator, that must mean that I am like super fluent and I can like speak Japanese rapid fire and say anything I want to say. Like, that's actually not true. A lot of translators, like, we have the gift of time on our side and we get to look up vocabulary that we don't know. And as a translator who exclusively translates Japanese to English, Japanese to English, Japanese to English, and mostly written stuff, I never have to speak Japanese, so I never practice speaking Japanese, so my spoken Japanese is actually not that great. And likewise, my written Japanese is also not that great because I'm only composing in English from Japanese, not the other way around. So I think it'd be more fair to have a test that would accurately reflect a person's Japanese abilities that way. So if you were considering taking the JLPT before you watch this video and now you're wondering or having second thoughts, I'm still, to be clear, I'm not 100% anti-JLPT. As I said, N1 and N2 are sometimes worth taking because they qualify you for certain jobs or scholastic programs. But if you want to just take the JLPT just to see where you're at in Japanese or for bragging rights or something, I don't recommend taking it just to see where you're at. You can take the practice tests online on the JLPT website, and that'll already give you a pretty good idea of where you're at in JLPT terminology without actually shelling out the money, making your travel arrangements, getting your hotel room, and actually taking the test to get that slip of paper. But I can still understand that if it's a personal goal for you, if you just want to test yourself and have a goal and work towards it and achieve it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just hope that we can all kind of start to move past the JLPT and stop thinking of it as sort of the end-all, be-all, this means you're a Japanese master, because it really isn't. Well, I hope that was informative and I hope I didn't make you too upset or angry. Again, it's your personal choice. If the JLPT does work for you for any of the reasons I outlined above, bless, go take it. Just don't feel like you have to take the JLPT to prove anything. Nice water. It's way too hot for tea.